Hello and welcome to the June Internationals 2017 winners and losers from DrivingMaul. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and what I'm going to do today is run through each of the teams and have a quick look at how they've done in this international window, and then give them a grade A, B, C or D as to how I think they have done. But before I get on to that, if you're watching on YouTube, you might have noticed that I've made over 360 videos, had over 90,000 views. But the advertising around that means that I got about $90 so far from those. If you think these videos are worth more than that, then please become a patron of DrivingMaul from as little as $1 a month. You can find the link below. If you're watching on Twitter, have a look in my profile and you can see a link there as to how to become a patron of DrivingMaul. So let's crack on and look at the teams. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the teams in their world ranking order before the last round of games, because they haven't updated it yet, and give you an idea as to my thoughts on how those teams have done. So first, by the way, I'm not going to bother with the some of the sort of early barbarians and funny games that they played early, because I don't think they were really that relevant to the window. So England went off and played Argentina minus their Lions players, obviously, and they came away with 2 victories from those games, trying out some new players and some new tactics as well, playing 3 playmakers across 10, 12 and 13. And you've got to say, coming away with 2 wins from the team that came 4th in the Rugby World Cup is a good result, a good return, considering the players that are missing. Also, the players that got blooded as well have obviously, it's given Eddie Jones some more information about them. He's got used to them, and it's given them some experience. So 2 out of 0. You've got to say that's got to be an A grade for the England side. Ireland, they went off and played some Tier 2 nations, first in the States, and then had 2 tests against Japan. They had a big victory over USA, 19-55, racked up another 50 against Japan in the first game, and then with 35 in that last one. Again, they're missing a lot of their first choice players with the Lions, and so 3 wins out of 0 against tier 2 opposition. Mission accomplished, basically, and so you've got to say they have had an A grade as well. Again, experienced, blooded new players, and got to see new players in that environment. Then we come to Australia. They started out the window beating Fiji at home. Then they lost to Scotland, and then they beat Italy rather unconvincingly. Yes, the scoreline was 40-27, but there were a couple of scores late on that really blew that out. And I think they also got saved by the TMO as well for an early disallowing an early Italian try. So you've got to say, for Australia, playing at home, losing to Scotland, who are an upcoming nation but were also missing a couple of players in the Lions, you've got to say that's probably a C grade for Australia. And it's a bit worrying when we look at the Rugby Championship. Obviously going to be playing the All Blacks, Argentina, who aren't going so great, but we're going to be talking about South Africa second, who are back on the up. So South Africa played France and came away with 3 victories, winning the series 3-0, racking up over 30 points in every game, restricting the opposition to a high of 15 points. Yes, the French were missing players because the top 14 final was late and weren't perhaps don't tour that great, but this is definitely a turnaround for South Africa compared to last year. Let's remember they didn't win a game on their November tour at all, including losing to Italy. So this is a big step up from that. And if you back that up with the fact that the South Africa A beat the French Barbarians 2-0 in their 2 games as well, things are looking positive for South Africa, and the change of assistant coaches has got to have been a good. It's got to be a big part of that. I think South Africa have got to come out of this with an A grade. The performances are better, and they've won all their games. Moving down, actually, we might as well talk about France as they played against South Africa, even though they're not the next ranked team in World Rugby. France, having lost all those ones and Now, there are some mitigating factors, like the top 14 final and the fact that the top 14 runs pretty much 12 months a year, which is a drain on those players. But the top 14 and the Rugby Union were working together a lot better, and we've got to say, during the November games and also the Six Nations, we really were talking about France having turned the corner and being on the way up. This is a bit of a setback to that, and we have to see how they respond come the November internationals. It's very disappointing after where we saw them progressing so far this season. The team in between those is Wales. Now, Wales beat Tonga in Auckland 6-24, and then went over to Samoa and beat Samoa 17-19. A very close win there, with also the a late score. Now, Wales again are a side that are missing a lot of players with the Lions, and lost even some more with sitting on the bench for the midweek games as well. But even so, you would expect them to have done better against Samoa. And that game against Tonga, I was at that one at Eden Park. It was a very turgid game. There was lots of mistakes being made. It was not good rugby by Wales by any stretch of the imagination. You've got to say, that's got to be disappointing for Wales, even if they are missing their coach and all those players. They did get the wins though, so at best a B grade, perhaps a C+ for them. We've talked about France. Moving on to Argentina. So Argentina lost those two games against England, which we've talked about before, but they did finish off the window, beating Georgia 45-29. One of the things that's changed since the last Rugby World Cup is that they only pick players who play in Super Rugby, which essentially means they pick players that are playing for the Jaguares. And trying to pick a national team from one club team really is really not kind of working. We've seen in Scotland that trying to pick it from two teams gives you a very small player base and hasn't really worked, and that they have to pick players from outside of Scotland. And yeah, Argentina only picking from one team essentially is not working, and we've got to worry about where they're going to sit when it comes to the next Rugby World Cup. And the Jaguares haven't been setting the world alight either in Super Rugby. Next up, we have Italy, and I've just realised I've missed off one of their games. But Italy lost to Scotland, lost to Fiji, and then finished off losing to Australia as well. So, yeah, Italy continued their decline from the Six Nations, and that's got to be a D grade for them. It's really kind of Conor O'Shea was supposed to have some long-term plan, and we need to see signs of that later in the year. Yes, they did beat South Africa last November, but they then lost to Tonga the following weekend, and they obviously lost all their games during the Six Nations, with just that one surprise tactic against England really giving them any sort of hope there at all. So yeah, a D grade for Italy, and worrying signs. Coming in, I'm going to talk about the top tier 2 kind of nations as well. Fiji have got to be one of the biggest winners of this window. They lost to Australia, then beat Italy and beat Scotland. It's been a massive window for them. And as I'll go on to later, this sets them up well for the rest of this summer, or sets them up well for July. And this, so Fiji are the biggest winners of this window. Japan, which is obviously another one of the tier 2 nations that we've been talking up and saying they should get, how we're going to get the promotions to tier 1. Beat Romania opening up and then lost those two games against Ireland. It's great they're getting tier 1 exposure. They're one of the few tier 2 teams, along with sort of Fiji, who have beaten tier 1 teams recently, with that win over South Africa in the Rugby World Cup. We need to see them pushing on from that now, because they're going to be hosting the Rugby World Cup in a couple of years' time. So probably a B, a C+, or maybe even a B. They did maintain their sort of position as one of the top tier 2 nations that win over Romania. Now Georgia's the other team that everyone's pushing to make it into tier 1, and they beat Canada 0-13, beat the United States 17-21, and then lost to Argentina 45-29. and Georgia still haven't got that Tier 1 scalp. They've never beaten a Tier 1 team. And if they're going to get themselves, force their way into the Six Nations, they're going to need to get that somewhere along the line. So I think just a pass here for Georgia, say maintaining their top group of the Tier 2 nations, but not getting that Tier 1 scalp that they need. So again, that probably a B, or maybe even rather than a C+. The biggest loser for this window is probably Tonga. They were supposed to host a game for the first time in absolutely ages. They haven't hosted a game in Tonga for many years now, and it was supposed to be against Wales, but that got moved to Auckland after concerns about the standard of facilities, which is why they haven't been hosting games. They lost that 6-24. That's not a good start for them. That was the only game they got in this window. Samoa got to play New Zealand and lost 78-0, so I'm not sure if that was a positive thing. It's good they got a 2-1 game, but not getting a thrashing. And then they ran Wales extremely close, 17-19. That second game sets them up well for July. And why do I keep saying about July? Because that's outside the window. Because in July there is the Pacific Nations Cup, and this is the second half of the Rugby World Cup qualification for these sides. They played each other last year. So these sides, Fiji, Samoa and Tonga. They played each other last year. Fiji currently have 2 wins. Samoa has 1. The results from last year and this year will be combined to decide who makes it into the Rugby World Cup. And Tonga are supposed to be hosting 2 of those games at home. So thankfully, the first time in many years they've had a test match at home, and good luck to them. Fiji clearly are looking in the pole position there to take the automatic spot at the Rugby World Cup, having beaten Italy and Scotland, and also having 2 wins under their belt from last year. There have been other Tier 2 nation games going on, so I'll just give you a quick recap of some of those. Kenya lost to Germany 29-30. Brazil beat Portugal 25-21. Canada lost to Romania 9-25. Romania beat Brazil 56-5, so Romania got 2 wins plus that loss against Japan. And then also in the Rugby World Cup qualifier, home and away between Canada and the USA, the first game was 28-all at home to Canada. So the return game against the USA is this coming weekend, and as they're at home, you'd think they'd be favourites to go through and get that Rugby World Cup slot. The loser then goes on to play Uruguay in a playoff for another Rugby World Cup slot. There has also been the World Rugby Nations Cup going on, which has featured an Argentinian 15, so basically their B side, emerging Italy, Namibia, Russia, Spain and Uruguay. If you want to have details of that, check out Wikipedia, but Uruguay were the hosts and winners of that competition. There has been an absolute deluge of international rugby this last 3 to 5 weeks, and it's been hard to keep track of it all, as you can see. So in summary, the big winner was obviously Fiji, with teams like England and Ireland going well. The biggest loser, I think, was Tonga, but you've also got to put Italy and France in that bracket as well. With people in, South Africa are also one of the big winners, with teams like teams like Australia, Scotland, in that kind of middle bracket, with good wins and good losses. So, thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please share this with your friends, or give it the old thumbs up on YouTube. As always, my link to my newsletter is above on Twitter, down below on YouTube, and don't forget that stuff that I said about becoming a patron of DrivingMaul at the beginning of the video. Again, thank you for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow with my Super Rugby predictions as Super Rugby kicks off again next weekend for the South African teams, and I'll give you those predictions tomorrow.